Welcome to CBH. Today we're talking about Jack Kirby as a co-creator of the Marvel Universe and characters such as the Fantastic Four. So we all know who Stan Lee is, but who is Jack Kirby? Jack Kirby is co-creator and a founding father of the Marvel Universe. No one can really say with certainty what was the nature of the creative discussions between him and Stan Lee, but no doubt they, with the help of Steve Ditko, came up with one of the best comic book franchises in history. It is important to see what Jack worked on before his work with Marvel that would strongly suggest his contributions went beyond simply just drawing, and that he brought many important ideas and concepts into his collaborations with Stan Lee, co-creating characters such as the Fantastic Four. So this leads into the Fantastic Four part of the discussion, which is the largest and most important, considering it started off the Marvel Silver Age in its first issue in 1961. There are many aspects to this first Fantastic Four issue, so dissecting it for its Jack Kirby precursors has to happen in multiple levels. The first level will be in discussing the group characters, then on to the group transformative experience, the cosmic radiation in space creating unknown side effects, alien interactions, and a couple villains. I'll go further into more villains and other items in the next episode. As far as group characters, there are astounding similarities between Jack Kirby and Dave Wood's Challengers of the Unknown, created in 1957, and Jack Kirby and Stan Lee's Fantastic Four, created in 1961. Both teams have a professor-doctor type, both teams have a rocky strongman, both teams have a blonde pretty person, yes, maybe a little bit of gender reassignment here from Ace to Susan, and both teams have a red guy, Red Ryan, and the Human Torch. Both doctors even have the same characteristic pose in their introduction to the story. Susan appears to have the blonde element of Ace Morgan, along with the passive female element from the Challenger's female co-star, June Robbins, who has a strong resemblance to Susan Storm. So are the similarities between the four members of each character a complete coincidence? Well, I don't think so. Roy Thomas, who was Marvel's former editor-in-chief, as well as a writer at Marvel when both Stan and Jack were working on the Fantastic Four together, actually said in an interview in a 1978 fanzine called Collector's Dream No. 5 that Jack Kirby brought over the spirit and group dynamic from the Challengers of the Unknown comics and put that into the Fantastic Four. Here is a clip from that interview. As far as both teams' origins, both the 1957 Challengers and the 1961 Fantastic Four start as a primordial mundane group that go through a near-death transformative experience where they vow to stay together and take on a large range of possible adventures. In the Challengers, the near-death experience causes them to take a vow of adventurism and overcome all superhuman conflicts as a team. The Fantastic Four take a similar vow after the cosmic rays that created the crash are shown to give them superpowers. This near-death group transformative experience is clearly evident in both stories shown in this image, which has the 1957 Challengers panels from Showcase 6 on top and the Fantastic Four panels from FF1, 1961 on the bottom. Of course, a lot of people say, well, what about getting effects or getting powers from cosmic rays or from a trip to space? After all, that's the main take-home point for Marvel's first Silver Age superhero comic, right? I mean, didn't Ben Grimm scream this? Well, that does happen in some stories worked on or created by Jack Kirby before his time at Marvel. In 1959, Jack Kirby's Sky Masters of the Space Force have some strips specifically about the unknown effects of cosmic radiation on humans in space travel. In this case, Jack was going for a realistic take on space travel, and here shows that cosmic radiation induced personality changes in this astronaut. In 1958, Jack Kirby worked on Challengers of the Unknown No. 3, where Rocky takes a trip through space and comes back with superpowers. This 1958 issue is really worth reading because the powers that Rocky comes back with are very similar to the powers harnessed by the Fantastic Four, including flame, super strength, body reshaping, and invisibility. Here are those panels side by side with the 1958 Challengers on the left and the 1961 Fantastic Four on the right. As far as superpowers being called fantastic, as in Fantastic Four, in Double Life of Private Strong 1, 1959 by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, they describe having a superpower as quote-unquote fantastic in very bold writing. The They also further go on to say that having superpowers involves exploring more percentages of one's brain. Let's go even farther back though, on our journey through cosmic rays to the year 1940, when Jack Kirby and Joe Simon worked on their sci-fi space fantasy character, the Blue Bolt. There was a villain named Marto who expanded his mind powers through cellular augmentation through cosmic radiation bombardment. So this precursor of cosmic ray-induced powers has been around and used by Jack Kirby for more than 20 years before Fantastic Four #1. On top of the similarities in their origins, the two comics held quite a few others. Compare this opening splash page in Showcase 11, 1957, and Fantastic Four 7, 1962. Both sets of aliens have similar methods of transporting themselves and their guests, our heroes, from one point in their base to another. Also check out the similarities in plot from Showcase 1, 1958, The Human Pets, and Fantastic Four 24, 1964, The Infant Terrible. Both stories are about a green, advanced, superior alien child that kidnapped our four heroes and was lectured by its parents to leave them alone. Even the Puppet Master, a villain who premiered in Fantastic Four 8, 1965, has a Jack Kirby precursor in Black Magic 4, 1951 for Prize Comics, with the same ending last panel of the fallen puppet next to our hero's feet. Green shape-changing aliens was also common in the Silver Age, and in Fantastic Four they presented in issue 2, 1962 as the shape-changing Skrulls, and in issue 11, 1963 as the Impossible Man. Jack Kirby made a green shape-changing alien years earlier in 1956 in Fighting America number 7. This next image has the 1956 sequence on the left and the Skrulls on the top right, and the Impossible Man for the center right and bottom right. On top of the green shape-changing aliens, the Fantastic Four also fought the Mad Thinker and his awesome android in Fantastic Four 15, 1963. And this scientist with this semi-living android servant has a Jack Kirby precursor in his 1950s newspaper tryout strip, Chip Hardy. The scientist's name was Gideon Challenger, and his android was called the Child. Here are the Chip Hardy images on the left, and the splash page showing the Mad Thinker and his android in Fantastic Four 15, 1963. So what about time travel? Wasn't that a Fantastic Four thing? There actually was a Jack Kirby precursor to the Fantastic Four time travel adventures, which presented in the Challenger story of using said time travel machine to go back to ancient Egypt in Challengers number 4, 1958. The same setup was used in Fantastic Four 1963 to go to a similar time and place. Here is a time travel machine in the Challenger story on the top and the Fantastic Four story on the bottom. It's very cool how they are both glowing yellow objects in a square shape. It gives the two stories a sense of Jack Kirby continuity, even though they're in different companies. As mentioned before, both teams went back to ancient Egypt in these two issues, and both teams were subject to Egyptian captivity. An interesting side note on the villain in Challenger's 1958 issue, he is called the Time Wizard, and he has the same costume design as another Marvel time-traveling villain named Immortus, who premiered in Avengers 10, 1964 with the cover done by Jack Kirby. On the left of the following image shows the Time Wizard from 1958 Challengers, and on the right shows 1964's Immortus. Same costume and everything! Now, when the Inhumans premiered in Fantastic Four 45, 1965 by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, their origins were further explored by them in Thor 146, 1967. In the origin, it shows that ancient man, after having been evolved by the Kree aliens, took refuge from other cavemen on their island of Attilan. Something neat here is that Attilan was referred to as the Island of the Gods in caveman times in Jack Kirby and Joe Simon's Tuck Cave Boy in Captain America Comics 1, 1941. This essentially means that Jack Kirby and Stan Lee brought forward Jack Kirby and Joe Simon's Attilan Island of the Gods caveman story from 1941 and put it into his Silver Age work in Marvel in the Fantastic Four and Thor comics in setting up the Inhumans. So by analyzing and breaking down the Fantastic Four work by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and looking at his Jack Kirby precursors, it's very easy to see why now it shows every time you open up a Fantastic Four comic book, it writes clearly created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. This has been a fun episode of CBH. I think it's really important to understand that the Fantastic Four started off the entire Marvel Universe, and Jack Kirby's contributions were huge in setting up the Fantastic Four in the first place. Stay tuned, we got one more episode in the Jack Kirby series. Cheers.